Stand up for what you believe in. How many times have you heard that?
How many times have you done that? Meet a man now who stood eyeball to eyeball with his convictions on the floor of the Oklahoma House of Representatives. He blinked, and tonight almost 1,000 people are dead. Did he help kill them? Well, that's what keeps Bill Wiseman up at night.
We send people to this place from the four corners of Oklahoma to cut deals and make laws. Their pictures line the back hallways, faces lost to history. We don't remember them, but every day we live by their decisions. One of them, sent to the House by the voters of South Tulsa in 1974, wishes desperately that he could step back in time and recast one of his votes. Instead, Bill Wiseman, soon to be a priest in the Episcopal Church, grapples with the conscience of an up-and-coming lawmaker who failed in the clutch and the muffled anguish of condemned men.
It's a terrible thing to have one's most notorious reputation be based on coming up with a new way to kill people.
Bill Wiseman was a rising star back then. He loved politics. It gave him an identity, a mission. He dreamed of a congressional seat, of the governor's mansion. He would do anything to stay in the game.
The motivation to get reelected, to be popular, to have everybody like you, everybody, lots of times, for me at least, worked at cross purposes with what that still small voice would say on issues like capital punishment and other things.
In 1972, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down capital punishment, but the states were given leeway to bring it back in a less arbitrary form. Wiseman, schooled by Pennsylvania Quakers since his earliest days, was sure killing people was wrong.
Bill Wiseman conducted a poll in his South Tulsa district. 80% of those who answered were for the death penalty. 20% had no opinion. No one was against it. Even though Bill Wiseman was, his vote had already been decided, because his only goal in life at that point was to keep his seat in this chamber.
I knew that capital punishment, it doesn't work, doesn't make sense. I couldn't see any way to justify it. I also knew that if I'd voted against it from my district, I would run a high chance of getting whooped. And I was just having the best time, and I didn't want to get whooped. So I was in a real dilemma.
What'd you do?
The wrong thing. As Yogi said, I made the wrong mistake.
When the vote came to the floor, Bill Wiseman joined all but 5 members of the House and pushed the yes button on his desk.
It made me kind of sick and pretty disgusted with myself.
Looking for a way to temper what he had done, Wiseman sat in his office alongside the state medical examiner and drafted a paragraph to help ease his guilt.
It said an intravenous saline drip should be established into which would be introduced a ultra-short-acting barbiturate in combination with a chemical paralytic.
In 1977, Oklahoma became the first government in the world to adopt death by lethal injection. And Bill Wiseman, who so hates the idea of taking human life, gained his footnote in history.
I don't hear the word lethal injection or execution or anything else without feeling a tug, because it's tied to me. I mean, I'll always be tied to it.
And now, with his recipe for death having spread to 37 states, Wiseman fears that instead of making capital punishment more humane, he's made it instead even easier for squeamish judges and juries to order the ultimate penalty. The condemned just go to sleep, after all. And every time he hears again of its use, this man dies a little too.
For whatever reasons of ego or vanity or need or self-loathing or insecurity or low self-esteem or anything, whatever the reasons, I knowingly made a decision when I knew it was wrong. And that's tough.
And perhaps that's why he's turned to the pulpit now, following in the footsteps of his father and grandfather. He'll use the collar to speak out against the taking of life, a man of deep faith who lost his moral bearings at a critical moment, who still mourns the character and courage that slipped away that day so long ago. And if there's to be a final judgment, who waits to hear his life's verdict.
But how does the man who came up with the recipe for lethal injection, what does he do on Judgment Day?
The same thing everyone else does. Throw ourselves on the mercy of God and say that we have done wrong and we're sorry.
about that House seat Bill Wiseman so desperately wanted to keep? Disillusioned by the Republicans' hard right turn, he switched to the Democratic Party in 1980 and was promptly defeated for re-election. He'll be ordained a priest 4 days before Christmas. 96 men and 1 woman sit on death row down in McAllister tonight. Since Texas killed the first man by lethal injection in 1982, only that state and Virginia have killed more prisoners than has Oklahoma.